Okay, you're all welcome to the class. And last time we looked at living things. We talked about living things, meaning of living things, characteristics of living things. We went further and we talked about differences between living and non-living things. We also looked at plants and animals, the differences between plants and animals. But today we want to look at something else. We want to look at something different. We want to look at classification of what? Of living things. A branch of biology that deals with the classification of living things is called taxonomy. So taxonomy deals with arranging living things into different classes according to their difference in what? In characteristics. So that is what we want to look at this morning. We want to look at classification of what? Of living things. But before we begin, let us talk about living thing briefly. Like we discussed last time, a living thing is anything or matter that possesses all the characteristics of life. And so for something to be called a living thing, that thing has to possess all the characteristics of life, ranging from excretion, growth, reproduction, irritability, and all of that. And so we want to look at classification of what? Living things, like classifying living things into different what? Group. Like I said, the branch of biology that deals with classifying of living things into different groups or classes is called taxonomy. And so previously, living things were classified into two major groups, and they are plants and animals. But then, as time went on, scientists discovered other living things that are neither plants nor animals. And so, living things are classified into, first of all, into kingdoms, and from kingdoms, they are classified into phylum for animals, division for plants, and after that, we have other subgroups like classes, and after the class we have the order, family, okay, genus and species. Okay, so we want to look at the first five kingdoms. Living things, like I said, are classified into five kingdoms, and these kingdoms are so our topic is classification, of living things, taxonomy. And so living things are classified into five major kingdoms, and they are kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi, kingdom Plantae, and finally kingdom Animalia. So we are going to look at them one after the other. Now in this topic, we are going to come across some words that are not very easy to understand, because these words are not words that we get to hear every day. They are words we rarely hear. So because of that, it becomes a little bit difficult to understand, but not impossible to understand. And so we're going to look at them. We are going to look at classification of living things. We're going to look at, first of all, in this topic, what we are to note, or the important aspect of this topic, it's first of all to know the different groups, and after that, you know the examples of organisms that belong to this group and their difference in characteristics. Of course, all organisms of the same group must share similar characteristics, and organisms of other groups, we have characteristics that differ from those of what? Other groups. So living things are classified into different groups based on their difference in what? In characteristics. Now, in classification of living things, there is one other thing we consider. Living things are classified based on their complexity, meaning that living things are classified from the most simple to the most complex. I think the simplest form of living thing is the bacteria, that's the schizophite, and the most complex is that's humans, and that's mammalia. So we're going to look at all that. But before we continue, there is actually an organism, yeah, that acts like a living thing and also a non-living thing, and that is the virus. Now, the virus does not fall into any of these kingdoms. The virus has characteristics that are similar to those of living things, and then also have characteristics of non-living things. And so what are the living characteristics of the virus? Now, when the virus is in a living cell, it assumes to be a living thing, and it can reproduce as replicate, and it also has a cell that is composed of DNA or RNA, and it has the ability to pass on traits from one generation to the other, just like a typical living thing. But then, of course, when the virus is outside the body of a living thing, the virus assumes a crystal-like structure and becomes non-living, meaning that it does not respirate, it does not excrete, it does not carry out other life characteristics. So the virus does not belong to any of these groups. So many scientists believe that the virus is on the borderline between a living thing and a non-living thing, meaning that it can neither be classified as a living thing, neither can it be classified as a non-living thing. So the first living thing I think is the bacteria, and it belongs to what? The group of living things called kingdom what? Monera. So we want to look at kingdom Monera, organisms of kingdom Monera, and their examples and also their characteristics. So kingdom Monera, it's what we are going to begin with. So kingdom Monera, which is the simplest form of what? Of living things. Now, living things, kingdom Monera is divided into two major groups, or two phyla, and they are phylum Schizophyta and phylum Cyanophyta. So these are the two groups of kingdom Monera. We have phylum Schizophyta and we have phylum Cyanophyta. And the example of schizophyte is the bacteria. An example of Cyanophyta is what we call the blue-green algae. The blue-green algae is also called the nostoc. Okay, so these are the two groups under kingdom Monera. Remember I said kingdom Monera are the simplest form of what? Of living things. So they are the most simple. Now let's look at characteristics of kingdom Monera. Characteristics of kingdom Monera. Characteristics of Monera. Like I said, what we have to note in this topic is the different group, examples of organisms that belong to this group, and their difference in characteristics. So the first group, which is the kingdom Monera, is divided into two major phyla, and they are phylum Schizophyta and phylum Cyanophyta. So what are the examples of organisms that belong to this group? There are two major examples of organisms that belong to this group, and they are the bacteria and the blue-green algae. So the bacteria is a schizophyte, while the blue-green algae is a cyanophyte. Okay, so let's look at general characteristics of what? Of kingdom what? Monera. Now, there is one characteristic that is peculiar to organisms of kingdom Monera, meaning that only organisms of kingdom Monera possess that particular characteristics, and that is that the organisms have prokaryotic cell, or are said to be what? Prokaryotes. So they are prokaryotes. So what is the meaning of prokaryotes? Meaning that they have cells. They have cells with no real nucleus. With no real or definite nucleus. So they have cells with no real nucleus. Yes, so they are prokaryotes, and that means that they have cells with no real nucleus. So this is a peculiar characteristic of what? Of kingdom Monera, as other organisms are not prokaryotes, but they are what? Eukaryotes, because they have cells with real or definite what? Nucleus. And what do I mean by being prokaryotic? Just like a typical animal cell, a cell is composed of the protoplasm, and the protoplasm is divided into two, and they are the cytoplasm and the nucleus. But that of kingdom Monera does not possess what? The nucleus, just the cytoplasm. Okay, so that is that. And secondly, they are microscopic organisms. They are microscopic in nature. They are microscopic organisms, meaning that they cannot be seen with the naked eyes. So organisms of kingdom Monera cannot be seen with what? With the naked eyes. They are actually what? Microscopic. Okay, so many of and they reproduce asexually. They reproduce asexually. So organisms of kingdom Monera can reproduce what? Asexually. So they are mainly autotroph. Many of them can manufacture their food. They are mainly autotrophs. So some bacteria can manufacture their food. So these are some characteristics of what? Of kingdom Monera. That means organisms that belongs to kingdom what? Monera. But the major characteristics that I want us to take note of is the first one, which is that they are what? Prokaryotes. Meaning that they have cells with no real or definite nucleus. So that is that. So we are going to move on